Olá, chuchus! Como estão todos? Hoje eu vou trazer para vocês um conto de um autor muito famoso. Ele é britânico, mas descendente de japonês, chamado Kazuo Ishiguro. Ele é conhecido pelo livro, por alguns romances bem famosos, assim. Um deles é o The Remains of the Day, que virou um filme com a Emma Thompson, o Anthony Hopkins e o Christopher Reeve, Super-Homem, né? É um filme da década de 90, se eu não me engano. E o outro é o Never Let Me Go, um filme que também virou um filme mais recente, de ficção científica, distópica, com a Carey Mulligan e a Keira Knightley também, e outros atores conhecidos. E ele foi, inclusive, o Kazuo Ishiguro, inclusive, foi knighted. Ele recebeu o título de Sir, assim como o Elton John, em 2019, por causa dos serviços prestados à literatura de língua inglesa. Mas eu vou ler para vocês agora um conto dele, também muito conhecido, de 1982, chamado A Family Supper. A Family Supper, by Kazuo Ishiguro. Fugu is a fish caught off the Pacific shores of Japan. The first has held a special significance for me ever since my mother died through eating one. The poison resides in the sexual glands of the fish, inside two fragile bags. When preparing the fish, these bags must be removed with caution, for any clumsiness will result in the poison leaking into the veins. Regrettably, it is not easy to tell whether or not this operation has been carried out successfully. The proof is, as it were, in the eating. Fugu poisoning is hideously painful and almost always fatal. If the fish has been eaten during the evening, the victim is usually overtaken by pain during his sleep. He rolls about in agony for a few hours and is dead by morning. The fish became extremely popular in Japan after the war. Until stricter regulations were imposed, it was all the rage to perform the hazardous gutting operation in one's own kitchen, than to invite neighbors and friends around for the feast. At the time of my mother's death, I was living in California. My relationship with my parents had become somewhat strained around that period, and consequently I did not learn of the circumstances surrounding her death until I returned to Tokyo 2 years later. Apparently, my mother had always refused to eat fugu, but on this particular occasion, she had made an exception, having been invited by an old school friend whom she was anxious not to offend. It was my father who supplied me with the details as we drove from the airport to his house in the Kamakura district. When we finally arrived, it was nearing the end of a sunny autumn day. "Did you eat on the plane?" my father asked. We were sitting on the tatami floor of his tea room. They gave me a light snack. "You must be hungry. We'll eat as soon as Kikuko arrives." My father was a formidable-looking man with a large stony jaw and furious black eyebrows. I think now, in retrospect, that he much resembled Shu Enlai, although he would not have cherished such a comparison, being particularly proud of the pure samurai blood that ran in the family. His general presence was not one which encouraged relaxed conversation. Neither were things helped much by his odd way of stating each remark as if it were the concluding one. In fact, as I sat opposite him that afternoon, a boyhood memory came back to me of the time he had struck me several times around the head for chattering like an old woman. Inevitably, our conversation since my arrival at the airport had been punctuated by long pauses. "I'm sorry to hear about the firm," I said, when neither of us had spoken for some time. He nodded gravely. "In fact, the story didn't end there," he said. "After the firm's collapse, Watanabe killed himself. He didn't wish to live with the disgrace." "I see. We were partners for 17 years. A man of principle and honor. I respect him very much." "Will you go into business again?" I asked. "I am in retirement. I'm too old to involve myself in new ventures now. Business these days has become so different, dealing with foreigners, doing things their way. I don't understand how we've come to this. Neither did Watanabe, he sighed. A fine man, a man of principle. The tea room looked out over the garden. From where I sat, I could make out the ancient well, which as a child I had believed haunted. It was just visible now through the thick foliage. The sun had sunk low, and much of the garden had fallen into shadow. I'm glad, in any case, that you've decided to come back, my father said. More than a short visit, I hope. I am not sure what my plans will be. I, for one, am prepared to forget the past. Your mother, too, was always ready to welcome you back, upset as she was by your behavior. I appreciate your sympathy. As I say, I'm not sure what my plans are. I've come to believe now that there were no evil intentions in your mind, my father continued. You were swayed by certain influences, like so many others. Perhaps we should forget it, as you suggest. As you will. More tea? Just then a girl's voice came echoing through the house. At last my father rose to his feet. Kikuko has arrived. Despite our difference in years, my sister and I had always been close. Seeing me again seemed to make her excessively excited, and for a while she did nothing but giggle nervously. Hee hee. But she calmed down somewhat when my father started to question her about Osaka and her university. She answered him with short formal replies. She in turn asked me a few questions, but she seemed inhibited by the fear that her questions might lead to awkward topics. After a while, the conversation had become even sparser than prior to Kikuko's arrival. Then my father stood up, saying, I must attend to supper. Please excuse me for being burdened down by such matters. Kikuko will look after you. My sister relaxed quite visibly once he had left the room. Within a few minutes, she was chatting freely about her friends in Osaka and about her classes at the university. Then quite suddenly she decided we should walk in the garden and went striding out onto the veranda. We put on some straw sandals that had been left along the veranda rail and stepped out into the garden. The daylight had almost gone. I've been dying for a smoke for the last half hour, she said, lighting a cigarette. Then why didn't you smoke? She made a furtive gesture towards the house, then grinned mischievously. Oh, I see, I said. Guess what? I've got a boyfriend now. Oh, yes? Except I'm wondering what to do. I haven't made up my mind yet. Quite understandable. You see, he's making plans to go to America. He wants me to go with him as soon as I finish studying. I see. And do you want to go to America? If we go, we're going to hitchhike. Kikuko waved a thumb in front of my face. People say it's dangerous, but I've done it in Osaka, and it's fine. I see. So what is it you're unsure about? We were following a narrow path that wound through the shrubs and finished by the old well. As we walked, Kikuko persisted in taking unnecessarily theatrical puffs on her cigarette. Well, I've got lots of friends now in Osaka. I like it there. I'm not sure I want to leave them all behind just yet. And Suichi, I like him, but I'm not sure I want to spend so much time with him. Do you understand? Oh, perfectly. She grinned again, then skipped on ahead of me until she had reached the well. Do you remember, she said, as I came walking up to her, how we used to say this well was haunted? Yes, I remember. We both peered over the side. Mother always told me it was the old woman from the vegetable store you'd seen that night, she said. But I never believed her and never came out here alone. Mother used to tell me that too. She even told me once the old woman had confessed to being the ghost. Apparently, she'd been taking a shortcut through our garden. I imagine she had some trouble clambering over these walls. Kikuko gave a giggle. She then turned her back to the well, casting her gaze about the garden. Mother never really blamed you, you know, she said, in a new voice. I remained silent. She always used to say to me how it was their fault, hers and father's, for not bringing you up correctly. She used to tell me how much more careful they'd been with me, and that's why I was so good. She looked up, and a mischievous grin had returned to her face. Poor mother, she said. Yes, poor mother. Are you going back to California? I don't know. I'll have to see. What happened to her, to Vicky? That's all finished with, I said. There's nothing much left for me now in California. Do you think I ought to go there? Why not? I don't know. You'll probably like it. I glanced towards the house. Perhaps we'd better go in soon. Father might need a hand with the supper. But my sister was once more peering down into the well. I can't see any ghosts, she said. Her voice echoed a little. Is Father very upset about his firm collapsing? Don't know. You can never tell with Father. Then suddenly she straightened up and turned to me. Did he tell you about old Watanabe? What he did? I heard he committed suicide. Well, that wasn't all. He took his family with him, his wife and his 2 girls. Oh, yes? Those 2 beautiful girls. He turned on the gas while they were all asleep. Then he cut his stomach with a meat knife. Yes, Father was just telling me how Watanabe was a man of principle. Sick. My sister turned back to the well. Careful, you'll fall right in. I can't see any ghosts, she said. You were lying to me all that time. But I never said it lived down the well. Where is it then? We both looked around at the trees and shrubs. End of part 1.